Hello and welcome to Week in One. I am Avi Tila. Week in One brings you the top news stories and interviews on eNCA that you may have missed over the past 7 days. Now let's take a quick look at the top stories this week. A weekend of bloodshed has shocked the nation as patrons at several liquor outlets were targeted by mass shootings. As many as 20 people have lost their lives in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. And the Senzo Meyiwa trial returns to the North Gauteng High Court. Let's go to this heart-shattering story where the country woke up on Sunday last week to the tragic news of shooting and killing of 16 people at a Soweto tavern in an area called Nomzamo. eNCA broke the story with Ngobile Mazala reporting from the scene as this devastating story unfolded.
Well, from what we had seen, Morena, just as we were reporting, just across, you saw that forensics was still there. Yes, we could identify some of the people, but we're told that they now have been moved from the scene. We understand that they're saying 2 already have been moved. We understand, though, that they're still busy. From what we have heard from the people speaking to us, they're telling us about 10 people are still inside the tavern, but 2 have already been moved. But of course, we heard from some of the families a little earlier on, Morena, just the emotion telling us how they are affected by what has occurred in this area. Now, we understand that the PC also is inside, so we wanted to speak to him to hear what is going on, but it seems he's gone back inside. Oh, there's a PC. Let's try and see if we can get the PC. PC, can we speak to you? Okay, so PC, of course, has been inside. Provisional Commissioner Elias Mawela has been inside. We understand that he's got a lot of information that he has had to speak to the police about. PC, quite horrific scenes to deal with in the morning?
Yes, indeed. It's a bad scene. When you see how the bodies are piled up there, you could see that every one of those people were struggling to get out of the of the tavern there. It was so difficult for them, but my detectives led here by my deputy, Major General Mbuso Khumalo, he have assembled a very good team. I have no doubt in my mind that with the cooperation of the community here, giving us information, we'll be able to crack this case.
And you say there are bodies piled up. Exactly how many are in there and how many have been moved from here?
2 have already been moved, and we have 10 here and 2 at Parakwanath. And we also have 9 victims who are still being treated there. Our worry is that 3 of those are also in the critical condition. We are hoping that they make it.
PC, do we know what happened yet?
No, the primary investigation suggests that these people, they were enjoying themselves here. The tavern is a licensed tavern. It was still operating within the operational hours. So all of a sudden they heard some gunshots. That's when people trying to run out of the tavern and so forth. So for now, we don't have the details, what is the motive, but as investigation progresses, we are hoping that we'll get more information as to what is the motive and why targeting these people. You can see that high caliber firearm was used and it was shooting randomly. So
we're going to see if we can't speak to anyone here to hear what they heard. But I think the PC just explaining to us that there's a lot of investigation that is still ongoing. Let's see if we can get anyone here to speak to us. Sanbonan, sicela ukukhuluma nani. Sifuna nje ukuzwa ukuthi nizweni nibonene.
Mama, ngizothi ukuzwa kwami nebengilele. Bekoma 11 ebusuku. Ngendlela abesisho ngayo ubuzizwa nje ukuthi kuyaliwa ngendlela engayo siyabulala sisho emntwini. Yabo. Wafika kumshana wami la koma 212 ezongivusa. Mangifika impela la ngumshana wami ulele.
Oh baba. Umshana wakho ungakanani?
Umshana moka 87. Njengoba ngikhuluma nje ulele khona lapha. Baningi kukhona nosibali wami. Baningi abanye abangakithi abaningi futhi yabona ikenga ngakithi iyona lelele lapha wesisi. Iningi kakhulu.
Now, several of our reporters were deployed immediately to follow up on this breaking story, and eNCA's Moloko Moloto took a close look at the impact that this act of violence is having on the families of those who lost their lives.
Ngibuhlungu kakhulu kakhulu umntana wami phela phansi ngiyanami afela usinuka ngibuhlungu kakhulu ngiphathekanga kakuhle.
A grieving mother weeping for her only son, Simtembile Gamede.
Esemncinci kangaka besana 19 October buye uzonenzela yonke into.
Simtembile's father says his teenage son, who had dropped out of school in grade 10, was worried about his future.
Ngela langa atshona ngalo ebesithi uzaphinda usezabuyela esikoleni.
Among the 15 people who died were siblings Sitembiso and Luyanda Mjoli, originally from Umzimkhulu in KwaZulu-Natal.
Bebehlala behamba bobayi-3 bemvakatshela utata wabo behlele behamba nabo be-friendly kubaba wabo bonge kuzutsho ukuthi ubaba wabo bongathi ubhuti wabo bengathi nje abantwana bomuntu kanti ubaba wabo bemthanda kakhulu umalume.
According to Police Minister Bheki Cele, there were 127 cartridges of AK-47 machine guns at the crime scene. Cele says police are now hunting 5 suspects who are believed to be from Kwanongoma in KwaZulu-Natal. Moluku Moloto, Orlando, Soweto.
Gauteng was not the only province to be affected by tavern shootings this past weekend. In KZN, 2 suspects have been arrested in connection with a similar shooting at a Pietermaritzburg tavern. Police say the tavern was lax about security. They add they're not ruling out more arrests. eNCA's Manqoba Mchunu reports.
It's a murder that has sent shockwaves throughout this community, and days after the tragic shooting at this tavern in Sweetwaters, families are desperate for answers. 12 people were shot here on Saturday evening, among them 29-year-old Dumseni Ngiti, who died on the spot.
So siyazama ukukhopha even though kungekho lula kodwa hayi umnikazi wendawo le akwalimalela khona umfowethu uyena kufanele sichazele ukuthi kwenzakalani ngoba phela for sure wayekhona lapho kufanele sazise njenganabantu bomndeni ukuthi kuze kufike lapho nje kwakade kwenzekaleni yayilapha isecurity yakhona nama footage kangithi abanama camera kufanele sazi konke ayikho esingafuna ukuyazi.
Another victim, 33-year-old Nkosingphile Ntsele, was also killed during the shooting. 2 other victims died hours later in hospital.
Hayi siphatheke kabi kakhulu ngoba sasuka la sibizwa abantu kuthiwa nangu Nkosingphile enzansi usedubulekile. Masifika enzansi sifike ngempela udubulekile lapha phansi uhlele phansi sibuze ukuthi kanti i-protection yenu injani la ngaphakathi mangabe kukuzingena umuntu azaqeda dubula umuntu aphinda gibele ningayi kuyena kwathiwa hayi bebekhona kodwa ke kungena ipholo nathi asilibonanga ungene nje umuntu wangena ngaphakathi wadubula sazange ukuthi kwenzakalani.
But while community members here suspect this could be a syndicate, authorities say otherwise.
Yeah, well, our investigation are leading us to take some people for questioning. Investigation are leading us to arrest some of the people and confiscate some of the exhibit. So the 2 that we got through our investigation are involved in this case.
And government is calling for stricter regulations.
There was negligence. You've got a gate here. There is a gate. People came with a car in a gate. It was never searched. They parked their car inside the tavern. Nobody searched them. They came out of the car. Nobody searched them. They came inside the tavern. Nobody searched them. They killed people in the tavern. And then that is negligent. That is negligence. And it means as government, if we don't do anything, I've said it earlier on, police can't be in each and every tavern. these police were overburdening them, but also we are saying they must do their job, but we must also come into their space and protect them and allow them to do their work.
8 people are still receiving treatment in hospital. In the meantime, police will be relying on CCTV footage to help solve the case. The Provincial Organised Crime Unit has now been tasked to investigate the matter. Mangoba Mchunu, Sweetwaters, KwaZulu-Natal.
Despite the coordinated nature of the attacks, Police Minister Bheki Cele says these shootings are not considered acts of terror. According to him, the shootings in Soweto and Pietermaritzburg were acts of criminal brutality. Let's hear what the minister had to say.
We believe that they could just, they coincided rather than coordinated, which tries to answer the question that do we believe that is terrorism as it was labeled. We don't believe it's terrorism. It's a criminality that is brutal, it's a criminality that is violent, that will have to work as such, because terrorism is a very high level of criminality. Organized will have to have some evidence as the police to be able to say so. Otherwise, we'll be really speculating in a very serious matter. So we don't believe it's terrorism.
Now, the minister went on to say that the Amabereta unit of the South African Police Service have been deployed in the area to allay any fears that the community may have of further attacks.
Namhlanje masilala azobe seqalile ukuhamba phakathi kwenu. Mangibizwa kuthiwa ngilethe amabharet noma ese-deep slot noma ese-Zanspruit noma ikuphi, ngiyangifonelwa ntambama kuthiwa ngiwalanda. Angizuwalanda, cha ngiwalanda, ngoba uma efikile avamise ukuthi kuzwakala ukuthi afikile.
Stay tuned to Weekend 1. Coming up, we'll be showcasing some of the big interviews conducted by our anchors on eNCA this week. Welcome back to Week in 1. Now, in this part of the show, we look at a few of eNCA's hard-hitting interviews from the week that was. Following bloodshed at taverns in Gauteng and KZN, we did a special focus on lawlessness in South Africa. We asked the burning question, is this our new normal? Defense Minister Thandi Modise recently lamented the low level of public trust in law enforcement agencies. Human Science Research Council Senior Research Specialist Stephen Gordon discussed this with eNCA's Tumelo Mthotwane.
What needs to be done, or at least even from the perspective of the Institute of the Security Studies, what needs to be done to improve public attitudes, do you think, towards the police?
There are a number of fundamental steps. Firstly, again, we must come back to the issue of police efficiency. The police and security forces, to a larger extent, must bring down the level of crime, particularly the level of violent contact crime, which is most detrimental to public attitudes towards the police. In addition, we need to see reduction in corruption within this organization and the police treating the general public with a greater level of fairness and impartiality, providing that services which the public feel they deserve from law enforcement. Indeed, one of the important measures that we look at is when people want problems solved in their lives regarding security, they name the police as the preferred service provider. People want the police to perform a justice role, yet they're very disappointed when asking the police to perform that role.
Now on to this, a solution to end rational power cuts in 2 years without increasing tariffs? That's what independent energy analyst Clyde Mallison has come up with. He discussed this with eNCA's Gareth Edwards.
2 years, we could maybe have you and I sitting here talking about the days of blackouts. Is that possible?
Absolutely. The unfortunate thing is that if we'd started it 2 years ago, as we should have, or in fact 3 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about blackouts now. So it's not good to always look at the past. But the reality is that we could have done something. And I think Meridian brought out a study that said if we had just carried on procuring our renewables as per the intended REAP program, we would have had 5% of the amount of load shedding in 2021 that we actually had, just with if we had carried on as we should have.
It's almost it's like we're playing a game of could have, would have, should have. You know, could have done that, would have done that, should have done that all those years ago. So I suppose even if we start doing that now, we kick the tin a bit down the road. What's your best case scenario if we were to get on board? We'll talk about IPPs and red tape in a moment, but if we got on board and did what we had to as a country now, how long before we take that little, you'll see it on the screen over there, blackout stage 3 off the screen?
I think there's a couple of caveats here. The first one is that the coal fleet must behave at least as badly as it's behaving. It mustn't behave worse. Okay. So that's the first thing.
So it's behaving badly.
It's behaving badly, but it mustn't behave worse. And some of the solutions that are out there will actually give it a chance of behaving better. So that's a given. If it behaves worse, whatever we do, we're still going to be in trouble. But we can install up to 10,000 megawatts of wind and solar, coupled with about 5,000 megawatts of storage inside of 2 years, if we treat it as an emergency, as we should treat it. In the specific, I'm saying that I don't believe we need to declare a state of emergency. What I've been saying for a long time now is we have to treat the shortage of energy as if it were an emergency. And there's quite a big difference between those two. A state of emergency conjures up troops on the streets, kind of not allowed out of your house, you know, dare I say crop-bottom trousers, but that's a kind of a state of emergency. We need to, and I've been saying this for a long time, we need to treat the situation, the crisis, as the emergency which it is. We know it's an emergency. We don't have to declare it.
There's been calls, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, because you play in this sector, for Eskom CEO, Andre de Ruyter, to step down. Someone's saying it's not going to make a difference who you put in now. He's got the ship steady and it's moving forward. Should Andre de Ruyter step down? Is he really the problem, or does it go higher up?
No, look, Andre de Ruyter is not the problem. Andre de Ruyter, quite frankly, would probably quite like to step down, because to be in that job at this point in time, but it's kind of like having to play where you don't set the rules. So Eskom don't say how much, they're not involved in how much new electricity can be added to the grid. They're tasked with keeping what's on the grid running. And so Andre de Ruyter has been told to go and try and get a whole lot of old cars working, but you're not allowed to buy yourself a new electric car. And he's kind of got his hands tied. So, you know, whether it's Andre de Ruyter or anyone else, it would just be a loss of momentum. There's momentum building up within Eskom. And I would actually like to see Eskom lead the emergency procurement, in the sense that they are the operators of the grid. They, in fact, our energy army, if you like. And if we're going to war against shortage of electricity, do we want to send the energy army to fight for us, or do we want to send the politicians? And that's the way I would look at it.
Some light in the dark as the country deals with power cuts. Now stay tuned to Week in One, keeping you abreast of the stories that have been making headlines in the past 7 days. Welcome back to Week in One. I am Mtila. Now let's head to the courts, where counsel in the Meyiwa murder trial was back in court this week. The case that's drawn both national and international interest has been characterized by delays and postponements. This week's bombshell, Advocate Maleselo Tefo announced his withdrawal as counsel for 4 of the accused, claiming he's being harassed. eNCA's Lindelo Masigane reports.
Proceedings began with the judge getting an update with regards to Advocate Malesela Tefo's letter to the NDPP demanding that charges against accused 1 to 4 be dropped. Tefo informed the court that he's received correspondence that his letter is getting attention. Tefo once more raised issues around the safety of accused 3 in prison, who says he's being kept under inhumane conditions.
Kufika lapha nge-4 December 2020 ngafika ngashawa ngingazi ngangishawelani. On my arrival there on the 4th of December 2020, I was assaulted and I don't know the reason why I was assaulted.
While Judge Chifiwa Maumela says he sympathizes with accused 3, Maumela says this matter needs to be taken up with correctional services. Then, out of the blue,
as the counsel of accused number 1 to 4, I hereby inform the Honorable Court that I'm withdrawing as the counsel of accused 1 to 4. I will no longer be able to proceed in this court based on the harassment that I'm receiving from the state and from the court.
the matter will be back in court on the 2nd of August to confirm whether accused 1 to 4 have been able to secure new legal representation. Meanwhile, Advocate Defo says he will hold a press briefing within the next 8 days to give more clarity on his withdrawal. Slinda Lomasigani, Pretoria.
Moving on to this, where as the country is gripped by a spate of violent crimes, things may get more complex as a potential strike by private security workers looms. The unions announced this week that there has been a breakdown of wage negotiations. eNCA's Ngobile Mazala has the story.
United in the fight against poor wages, the private security sector unions are asking for a 900 Rand wage increment for 3 years every month from their employers nationally. Part of the argument is that the unions are demanding to abolish the area system, which enables a flat salary for everyone. But they say the negotiations that started earlier this year have now reached a deadlock. They are now approaching CCMA as they consider downing tools nationally. According to the 23 unions that represents over 500,000 private security guards, should the sector take to the streets, private and government infrastructure may be left unguarded.
The security officers are not going to be seen in any building, in any shop, or in any school, or in any properties. For example, we represent all the reaction officers. If they are not going to be able to respond to your properties, which means all South Africans in general will be vulnerable in terms of the high levels of crimes, as you are aware of them. So everyone will be affected if it happens that we go on a strike. Not individual will be left without being affected.
We are saying we have reached a deadlock. Workers must get ready. We are taking the dispute to the CCMA. The CCMA is going to facilitate. If, again, the employers come with the same offer that they have offered during the bargaining council, at that point in time, we'll be asking the CCMA to issue a certificate.
The sector says they are also asking for simple things like an increase in family responsibility leave from 5 to 7 days per year. Meanwhile, the employers are asking the security officers to go back to basic conditions of Employment Act, which gives minimum employment conditions. Ngobile Mazala, Johannesburg.
And finally, the infamous Amaperete, the police tactical response team, has been deployed to assist SAPS in Soweto. This follows the visit and promises by Police Minister Bekicele that law and order will be restored in the area. eNCA's Heidi Jokos was there.
So we do know that JMPD, together with SAPS, together with the flying squad and Amaperete, have been deployed here to Soweto, and currently they are doing a high stop and search operation where they are stopping people walking past, they are stopping any vehicle as well walking past, so they are driving past rather, so they are doing a full operation. We saw JMPD as well as SAPS and as well as the Amaperete being paraded and being briefed as to this particular operation. So for the first couple of hours, they will be deploying and moving around areas like Nomzamo, where they are just searching and trying to see whether or not they can pick anything up at all. My colleague Noko is showing you at the moment the police visibility that you can see here. This particular vehicle that you are seeing at the moment is where the Amaperete are inside. They have been here to support the various officers that have been deployed here to Soweto. We do know that Police Minister Bekicele did indicate that the Amaperete will be deployed to the area, of course, to provide the necessary support and the necessary operations that will be taking place here in Soweto following that massacre that took place on Sunday. So We are seeing high police visibility here. You know, Annelie, I was speaking to my colleague Noko earlier on saying that this is no way to live. You're seeing community members coming out and basically staring in possibly complete shock to say what is actually going on. This community has been crying out for help. This community has been crying out for help to say, you know, what is actually going on here and why has there been no police visibility. It's been rather a shocking moment for them because it's just happened on their doorsteps, but they've been begging for police visibility. There have been cries out to say there are killings happening in our area, in our community. Why is nobody coming out to show the necessary support? So we are seeing it in full force at the moment. We do know that there are teams deployed for the morning, into the afternoon, as well as into the early hours of the morning and the evening. So you're seeing it in full force. My colleague Noko showing you from SAPS to JMPD to Flying Squad and as well as the Amabarese.
And that brings us to the end of this week's Week in One. From myself and the Week in One team, have a great weekend.